They thought she slipped and fell into the boiling earth. For 6 years, everyone believed Sarah Brennan and her 2-year-old son vanished during a summer hike, swallowed whole by the unforgiving Colorado wilderness. No bodies, no clues, no noise. But then, a retired K9 named Hunter started barking in the middle of the forest. And what he uncovered wasn't just a cold trail. It was a buried secret that someone was desperate to keep hidden forever. The July air was thin and dry in the Rocky Mountains, the kind that made your lungs work harder, even standing still. Officer Lila Monroe pulled her SUV into the gravel lot of the Cascade Trail System just after dawn. Morning sunlight filtered through tall pines, throwing long shadows across the cracked information boards and faded warning signs. A yellow ribbon stretched across the entrance with bold letters. Restricted, active investigation. She killed the engine and looked over at the passenger seat. Hunter sat upright, alert but calm, his amber eyes tracking the movement of rangers in the distance. The old German shepherd still looked like he belonged in uniform. Thick sable coat, powerful frame. The kind of dog that made criminals freeze mid-run. Even after 2 years off duty, he hadn't lost a step. When the department called and asked if she and Hunter would consult on a reopened missing persons case, there wasn't a second of hesitation. They'd solved dozens of cases together, but this one felt different from the minute they were briefed. A ranger had found something. A toddler's sock, half buried near an emergency shelter, 6 years after a young mother and her little boy had supposedly vanished without a trace. Lila opened the door. Hunter leapt out with the grace of a dog half his age and immediately began sniffing the wind. He always started slow, nose up first, then ground, then circles. Every scent told a story, and Hunter was the kind of dog that read between the lines. "Take your time, big guy," Lila murmured, adjusting her vest. They started toward the Avalanche Creek shelter, nothing more than a 12-by-16 wooden box with a rusted metal roof. But it was the last known waypoint of Sarah Brennan, a 34-year-old hiking enthusiast and mother of 2-year-old Ethan. The official report said it was a tragic accident. They'd planned a short-day hike. It was hot. The terrain was steep. Accidents happen. But even then, something hadn't felt right to Lila. Sarah was an experienced hiker, obsessive about safety, and known for triple-checking routes and weather conditions, and she was hiking with a toddler. That wasn't the kind of woman who just disappeared. Now, 6 years later, a sock changed everything. As they neared the shelter, Hunter's demeanor changed. He paused, ears forward, and then circled a low wooden bench, bolted to the inside wall, nose to ground, snuffling deep. "You got something?" Lila asked, stepping aside. Hunter barked once, sharp, focused, and began pawing at the floorboards beneath the bench. His claws scratched wood, then something softer. Lila knelt, heart racing. She reached into her pack and pulled out gloves, gently clearing the debris. It wasn't a sock. It was something else. A necklace, delicate silver with a tiny compass charm still intact. "Holy hell," she whispered, recognizing the piece from the missing persons file. It had been Sarah's, a gift from her husband, engraved on the back, M&S, always find your way home. She stood up, heart pounding. They had assumed Sarah and Ethan had fallen into one of the many geothermal hot springs in the area. Morning Glory Pool, specifically. The minerals would have destroyed most organic material. Case closed. But if this necklace was here, at the shelter, it meant Sarah had never made it to the spring. If you're hooked by stories like this, real dogs, real heroes, and untold mysteries, be sure to subscribe to our channel Heroes for Animals. We share the most gripping, emotional, and inspiring canine stories from across the country. Don't miss what happens next. "Detective Chen," Lila said into her radio, still staring at the necklace in her gloved hand. "We've got a positive shelter site. Item matches the description from the original case file. Copy that, came the reply, cool and professional. Is it confirmed? Leela looked down at Hunter, who was now sitting, tail thumping once, as if satisfied. Confirmed. Minutes later, the scene buzzed with activity. Forensics arrived. CSI teams began to cordon off the structure. Lila backed away, giving them room, but Hunter stayed close. His gaze wasn't on the necklace or the shelter. He was staring off into the woods, watching, listening. There's something off about this, Chen said when she arrived, slipping under the tape. If the necklace is here, Sarah might have spent the night. Maybe got spooked. Or maybe someone was with her. Or someone was already here, Lila said darkly. They stood in silence, letting that settle. Hunter let out a low growl. Lila followed his eyes, toward the tree line near an old maintenance trail. Officially decommissioned. Not marked on the maps tourists used. You think he's onto something? Chen asked. I think he's saying someone didn't want her found. They hiked the overgrown trail slowly, letting Hunter lead. And he did. With purpose. 10 minutes in, he stopped and sniffed the ground, then barked once and began digging. Dirt sprayed. Lila dropped to her knees. Another find. It was a rusted metal grommet, the kind used in hiking boots. Children's size. Lila looked up at Chen. That's not weather loss. That's hidden. The detective's jaw tightened. Someone left those here on purpose. But why? Back at the trailhead, Lila stood beside Hunter, scratching behind his ears. Good boy, she whispered. He leaned into her touch, but his eyes were still scanning the forest, still alert, still waiting for whatever came next. She didn't know yet what they were about to uncover. She didn't know someone had been watching the case from the start, that Sarah's disappearance wasn't an accident, that Ethan might still be alive. But Hunter knew the scent of the truth, and he had just begun to track it. The necklace didn't lie. Detective Patricia Chen held the evidence bag up to the sunlight streaming through the tent flaps. The compass charm still gleamed, scratched but whole. Its tiny engraving, M and S, always find your way home. Now the center of a very uncomfortable truth. Sarah Brennan never made it to Morning Glory Pool, which meant the original story was all wrong. Outside the tent, the forest pulsed with the usual early summer rhythm. Chirping birds, rustling pine branches, distant squirrel chatter. But the search site had gone quiet. Hunter, the German Shepherd K9, who'd uncovered the necklace, stood by the bench inside the shelter where he had first sniffed out the scent. He wasn't pacing. He wasn't panting. He was watching. Still, waiting, like he knew the story wasn't done. Officer Lila Monroe paced outside the evidence tent, arms crossed over her chest, chewing her lip. We're missing something, Chen. We're missing a lot, the detective said, zipping up the evidence bag. You don't bury a necklace in the floorboards of a ranger shelter unless you're trying to keep it hidden, which means someone was with her, or found her, Chen added. Maybe after she disappeared. Maybe she was in distress, and someone took advantage. Lila knelt down next to Hunter and rubbed his shoulder. You smell anything else, boy? Hunter sniffed the wind again, then turned his nose back toward the tree line, exactly where he'd barked earlier, toward that forgotten trail that wasn't on any current map, but looked like it had been used recently. Very recently. An hour later, Chen, Lila, and a small forensic team followed Hunter up the old trail. It was overgrown, but faint boot prints showed where someone had traveled through in the last week. Probably a ranger. Maybe the one who found the sock. Or maybe not. Hunter led confidently, stopping only when his nose caught something strong. He veered off the trail toward a shallow embankment, his head low, tail straight behind him. He barked sharply and began digging. Lila rushed forward. You've got something, don't you? The ground beneath was soft, freshly disturbed. 2 inches down, Hunter stopped and stepped back. Lila cleared the rest carefully with her gloved hands until she uncovered a child's hiking boot. Tan, faded, and half-melted. The logo was barely visible, but Lila recognized it. It matched the photo from the Brennan family album, a picture taken just days before Sarah and Ethan disappeared. Ethan had been wearing those boots. Chen knelt beside her. That confirms it. Ethan was on this trail. Lila held her breath, then said what they were both thinking. But we were told they went south toward Morning Glory, not north. Why would Sarah come this way? Chen stood and looked around the clearing. Only reason you'd go this way is if you knew the shelters. Timber Creek, Pine Ridge, Avalanche Creek were nearby. This is local knowledge, because, Bitlagi said. Exactly. Trail staff, rangers, or someone who's spent years here. That night, Lila sat outside the ranger station, sipping bad coffee from a vending machine and watching the moon rise over the tree line. Hunter lay at her feet, his head resting on his front paws, but eyes still scanning. Sleep was out of the question. The sock, the necklace, now the boot. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. And someone had been here the entire time. A ranger named Tom Mitchell walked out of the station, stretching his arms and rolling his shoulder like he'd just gotten off a long shift. Late 40s, calm demeanor. The kind of guy you'd trust to tell you where to set up a tent or what trail to take. Officer Monroe? He nodded. How's your dog? Lila gave a non-committal smile. Still working? Mitchell knelt to pat Hunter's side. The German shepherd didn't growl, but he didn't wag either. Just stared at the man with a strange intensity that made Lila uncomfortable. He's beautiful, Mitchell said. I remember when we had a handler come out here back in 19. Don't see too many dogs like that anymore. Department budgets, you know? Yeah, Lila said slowly. We've had to scrape to get him even part-time status again. Mitchell rose. Glad you did. If anyone can find the truth in these woods, it's one of these guys. He gave Hunter a final glance, then walked to his truck and drove off into the trees. Hunter growled softly once. Just once. The next morning, Chen called Lila into the temporary command trailer they'd set up near the trailhead. A map was spread across the table, littered with post-it notes, pins, and timelines. I went through Sarah Brennan's old hiking logs, Chen said. She kept detailed notes on every hike. Weather, trails, notes about Ethan's energy levels. It's all archived in her blog. She was that kind of mom, Lila said, folding her arms. She was that kind of mom, which makes this entry from the week before her disappearance interesting. Chen handed her a printed blog post from July 8, 2019, planning to take Ethan to see the Alpine Meadow next week. Might test out the upper loop if weather holds. I'll check the shelters tomorrow to make sure they're stocked. Lila's eyes widened. She was scouting the trail in advance, which means she would have known the exact route. And she was checking shelters, alone. Maybe she met someone then, someone who saw an opportunity. Lila tapped the post. And the Alpine Meadow connects near Avalanche Creek Shelter. Exactly. Hunter, who had been lying near the back door of the trailer, suddenly stood and sniffed the air again. He turned, faced west, and gave a low bark. What's over that ridge? Lila asked. Chen looked at the map. An old maintenance road. Leads to a decommissioned ranger cabin. We haven't checked it yet. Lila grabbed her vest and clipped Hunter's leash. Then it's time we paid it a visit. The road was barely drivable, so they parked a mile out and hiked the rest of the way. Hunter led, tail straight, moving faster than usual. His whole body buzzed with focus. When the cabin came into view, Lila immediately noted that the lock on the door had been changed. It was newer than the others on park structures. Not government issue. Someone's been using this, Chen muttered. They stepped inside. The air was stale, cold. Dust layered everything. But the signs were there. Footprints on the floor, a coffee mug still on the table, a blanket folded too neatly on the cot. Could have been used as recently as a few days ago, Lila whispered. Hunter sniffed the cot, then turned toward the back wall, where a loose floorboard jutted up slightly. He pawed at it, then sat, waiting. Leela knelt and lifted the board. Inside the space beneath it, a plastic container. Inside that, a faded yellow T-shirt with a child's cartoon print. The kind a 2-year-old might wear on a summer hike. Chen opened a second bag from the box. Inside it, dried, mud-caked hiking socks. Child size. One of them matched the sock found near the shelter. "This is a cache," Chen said. "Tons." He kept these, souvenirs. Lila's breath caught. He didn't forget them. He saved them. Whoever he is, he didn't just hurt Sarah. He took Ethan. Hunter let out a sharp bark, then bolted out the front door. "Hunter!" Lila called, sprinting after him. He had something. A scent. He had found a trail again. The forest blurred around her as Officer Lila Monroe ran. Branches slapped her arms. Pine needles crunched underfoot. Her lungs burned from the altitude, but she kept going. Her eyes locked on the sable blur ahead. Hunter tore through the underbrush, moving like a creature half his age, driven by instinct, memory, and a scent no human could ever detect. He'd caught something near the cabin, something fresh, and if Hunter was chasing, Lila knew better than to hesitate. "Hunter!" she called, breath ragged. The dog didn't slow. He was locked in, nose to ground, tail stiff. She caught up just in time to see him dart left through a dense thicket, ducking beneath a fallen log that marked the edge of a forgotten trail. One not on any map. Lila ducked through after him and stopped. There, nestled between moss-covered rocks and thick trees, was a second cabin. Smaller, older, almost camouflaged by time. It wasn't on the park's shelter list, and that made her stomach twist. Because if she didn't know about it, then neither did most of the other rangers. Only someone who had been here for a very long time. Hunter paced back and forth in front of the door, barking low and steady. His fur stood on end. Lila stepped forward, hand on her sidearm. "Good boy," she whispered. She glanced at the door. It was cracked slightly, swinging on rusty hinges. A faint chemical smell wafted out. She stepped in slowly. The interior was dark and still. Light filtered through gaps in the walls. Dust floated in the air like ghostly snow. And then she saw it. A child's blanket folded neatly on the bed. A small blue backpack, the kind sold at Target, slouched in the corner. And taped to the wall, faded from time and sun, was a drawing done in crayon. A stick figure family. Man, woman, child, and a dog. Her breath hitched. This wasn't just a hiding place. This was someone's home. Detective Chen arrived 10 minutes later with backup. The cabin was cordoned off, photographed, and processed like a crime scene. Hunter sat nearby, eyes scanning the trees. He was unusually still, even for him. Watchful. Lila briefed Chen, pointing out the drawing and the backpack. "It's Ethan," she said. "He's been here. Maybe not recently, but long enough to draw pictures. The blanket's clean. Someone's been taking care of him." Chen nodded, grim. "Then we're not just dealing with a murder. We're dealing with a kidnapping. And possibly grooming," Lila added. "He's being raised by someone, trained to forget who he was." Which begs the question. Chen looked toward the trees. Who the hell is this person? Back at the ranger station that evening, Lila paced, while Hunter lay on the office floor beside her. His breathing was steady, but his ears twitched every time someone passed by outside. "He's not relaxed," Chen said, coming in with a file folder. "He's waiting," Lila replied. "He knows the case isn't over. He's always known." Chen laid the folder on the desk. "I dug deeper into personnel records, particularly seasonal hires from 6 to 7 years ago. You were right about Mitchell." Lila tensed. "He's been working here for 15 years. Solid record. Trusted. Too trusted. He was on duty the day Sarah disappeared." Lila's eyes narrowed. That wasn't in the original file. It wasn't flagged. The original search assumed accidental fall into the spring. Nobody followed up on his route logs. But guess what I found? Chen flipped open the file and pointed at a scanned page. Shelter Maintenance Schedule, July 15th, 2019. Mitchell's name was listed next to Avalanche Creek Shelter, exactly where Sarah and Ethan were last seen. Lila's heart pounded. He was there, and he never said a word. They confronted him the next morning. Mitchell sat behind his desk, hands folded, calm, too calm. "I already told the other team what I knew," he said, sipping his coffee. That day was normal. "I checked all 3 shelters before the rain came in." "And you never mentioned you saw Sarah Brennan," Chen said. "I didn't," he replied. "Maybe she came through after. The logs are time-stamped. You can check them." "We did," Lila said. "You were the last one to sign in before the storm." Mitchell smiled, thin and practiced. "Coincidence." Hunter growled softly, sitting beside Lila. Chen reached into her bag and dropped a photo on the table. Mitchell looked down. The crayon drawing. His smile faltered. "You want to tell us where that came from?" Lila asked. "Never seen it before," he said. But his eyes were already betraying him. A twitch, a tightening of the jaw. Lila stepped forward. Hunter found the cabin. The second one, the one with no park ID number, no blueprints. "You know the one." Mitchell stood abruptly. "You need a warrant if you're going to start accusing—" Chen cut him off. "We already have a warrant. For your locker, for your home, for every damn building you've touched in this park. So unless you want this to get ugly, I suggest you sit down and tell us what happened." Mitchell's shoulders sank. And then he said it. "I didn't mean to hurt her." The confession was slow, fragmented. Choked with emotion, Lila couldn't tell was real or rehearsed. Mitchell told them about that July afternoon, how Sarah came into the Avalanche Creek shelter, seeking cover from the storm. How Ethan was tired, hungry. How she asked if they could wait it out. "She was kind," he said, "polite. Told me all about how much Ethan loved animals. She laughed when he tried to touch my radio." Chen's jaw tightened. "What happened, Tom?" Mitchell hesitated, then, "I told her about Rebecca, my wife, our miscarriages, our adoption failures. I asked if she'd ever consider letting someone else raise Ethan." Lila stared at him, frozen. "You're kidding me." "She got upset," Mitchell said, looking down. "She told me I was sick. She said she was leaving, taking Ethan." "And you didn't let her," Chen said coldly. Mitchell's silence was the answer. He'd waited until Ethan was asleep, used a chokehold, wrapped Sarah's body in a tarp, and carried her to the morning glory pool before sunrise. It was supposed to be fast, clean. I didn't want him to see anything. "And Ethan?" Lila asked. Mitchell looked up, tears welling. "I raised him. With Rebecca. We named him Owen. He's 8 now. He plays soccer. He loves comic books. He's our son." "No," Chen said firmly. "He's not. He's the son of a woman you murdered." As Mitchell was escorted from the ranger station in handcuffs, a single word escaped his lips. "Hunter!" The dog, standing in the lobby, growled, low and rumbling, then barked once, sharp, defiant, like he was saying, "You lose." The next day, Lila sat quietly in the back of the command trailer as a team of agents from Child Services, FBI, and local PD prepared to retrieve Ethan from a remote cabin Mitchell had used to hide him. He was there, alive, safe for now, but he didn't know the truth. Didn't know his name was Ethan. Didn't know his mother had been murdered. Didn't know the people who raised him were criminals. Hunter lay curled beside her chair, his head resting on her boot. He'd done his job. And now, the hardest part would begin. Helping Ethan remember the life he'd been stolen from. The old forest road leading to the cabin was washed out in places, barely drivable even with 4-wheel drive. 2 sheriff's cruisers, 1 unmarked FBI SUV, and a child services vehicle kicked up dust as they crept down the path. The sun had barely risen, casting a pale orange hue across the pines. Lila Monroe sat in the front passenger seat of the lead SUV, knuckles white around her coffee cup. Next to her, Detective Patricia Chen scrolled silently through the case file on her tablet, double-checking the timeline. It had all come together so fast. Mitchell's confession, the discovery of the hidden cabin, the list of fabricated documents, fake birth certificates, a forged adoption record, and Ethan, 8 years old now, or Owen, as he'd been called by the only family he could remember. "I still can't believe it," Lila said, finally breaking the silence. Chen didn't look up. "I can. I've seen worse. But I've never seen a dog pull off what yours just did." Lila glanced in the back seat. Hunter sat calmly, tongue slightly out, eyes locked forward like he understood exactly what was about to happen. And maybe he did. He was a canine, sure, but he was also something more. Some dogs had instincts so refined, so emotionally in tune, it was like they operated on a different frequency. Hunter was one of them. This wasn't about drugs or tracking fugitives. This was about a boy who didn't know he'd been stolen. The convoy stopped half a mile from the target. From there, they hiked in. The hidden cabin was even smaller than they remembered. One story, log-framed, with a sagging roof and a rusty propane tank. It looked like something from an old hunting magazine. Peaceful, normal. But Lila knew better. This was where a murderer had raised his stolen child. A team of agents spread out behind trees, establishing a perimeter. One of the female social workers, Claire, took the lead with Chen and Lila. Hunter stayed close to Lila's side, ears perked, body tense. Lila could hear her heartbeat in her ears. They reached the porch. A child's backpack lay on the step. Spider-Man design, faded from sun. A beat-up soccer ball leaned against the railing. A welcome mat that read, "Home is where the trees are," sat crooked under the door. Claire knocked gently. A woman's voice, measured, cheerful, answered from inside. "Just a minute." Footsteps. Then the door creaked open. Rebecca Mitchell stood in the frame, mid-40s, graying at the temples, wearing jeans and a Columbia fleece like any suburban mom. She smiled until she saw the badges. Then her expression froze. "Mrs. Mitchell," Chen said calmly, "we need to speak with you." Behind her, a young boy peeked around the kitchen doorway. Blonde hair, blue eyes. His hand gripped the edge of the wall. "Mom?" he called. And just like that, the room shifted. Rebecca spun. "Owen, go back to your room, sweetie. Mommy's just talking to the park rangers." But Claire stepped forward. "Ethan," she said gently. "Hi, my name's Claire. We're here to help you." The boy's face scrunched in confusion. "My name's not Ethan." Lila felt a sharp ache in her chest. Before anyone could move, Rebecca lunged. She slammed the door shut, locking the deadbolt in one motion. Inside, they heard her shouting for the boy to go out the back. Scrambling. A window shattering. Chen cursed. "Back entrance!" Agents surged around the sides of the cabin. Lila drew her weapon and moved with the team, flanking left. She heard barking. Hunter had darted forward, breaking ranks. "Hunter!" she shouted, but he was already moving, faster than any of them. The sound of breaking sticks, running feet, gasps, then silence, and a bark, one sharp, direct bark. When Lila rounded the back of the cabin, she saw him. Hunter stood in front of the boy, Ethan, who had stopped mid-run, frozen in place. The German shepherd stood between him and the woods, tail straight, gaze locked on the boy like a statue. Ethan's eyes were wide. He stared at the dog, chest heaving. "You're not gonna hurt me?" he whispered. Hunter didn't move, just tilted his head. And then, very slowly, he stepped forward. Ethan didn't run. He knelt and reached out his hand. Hunter licked it once. Lila arrived seconds later, dropping to her knees beside them. "Hey, buddy," she said softly. "It's okay. You're safe." Ethan looked up at her, confusion still etched in every line of his face. "Why did that dog know my name?" Lila blinked. "What did he say?" "He barked. And it was like I heard it. Inside. Like I used to know him. She swallowed hard. Maybe you did. Rebecca Mitchell was arrested on sight, charged with conspiracy to kidnap, obstruction of justice, and being an accessory to murder. She went quiet after they cuffed her. Didn't resist. Didn't cry. Just muttered one sentence under her breath. He was mine too. As she was led to the squad car, Lila watched Ethan sit beside Hunter on the porch step, stroking the dog's thick fur. Claire sat beside him, quietly explaining the situation. He didn't say much. He just kept his hand on Hunter, like he was the only solid thing left in a collapsing world. Later that afternoon, back at the local precinct, Lila stood outside the Child Services office and watched through the glass. Ethan sat inside with a counselor, hugging a stuffed bear. The drawing from the hidden cabin was on the table between them. "Do you think he'll remember?" Lila asked Chen, who stood beside her. "I think he already does," Chen said. "Not in words, but feelings, smells, that dog. It's in there." Lila looked down at Hunter, who lay at her feet, calm once more. He'd done more than find clues. He'd found a child's soul. That night, back at the motel, Lila sat on the edge of her bed, brushing loose dirt from Hunter's coat. He rested his head on her lap, eyes half closed. "You saved him," she whispered. "You knew, before we did." Hunter let out a low, contented exhale. The news played on the muted TV in the background. Headlines rolled across the bottom of the screen. Breaking. Missing boy found alive. After 6 years, Kane Tracker leads authorities to stolen child park. Ranger couple arrested in decades-long cover-up. Leela turned it off. She didn't need the world to tell her what she already knew. Some heroes wear badges, some wear collars. The hallway outside the observation room was colder than usual. Or maybe it just felt that way. Officer Lila Monroe stood with her arms crossed, watching through the two-way glass. Inside, Ethan sat stiffly in a child-sized chair, his legs swinging, his little sneakers barely scraping the floor. Across from him was Dr. Sharon Martinez, a licensed child trauma specialist flown in from Denver the night before. There were no toys in the room, no bright colors or murals, just soft lighting, neutral tones, and a single art station with markers and drawing paper. Simple, safe. Ethan hadn't touched the crayons yet. "I don't understand what I did wrong," he whispered, barely audible through the intercom. "You didn't do anything wrong," Dr. Martinez said gently, "but some very hard things happened, and we want to help you understand them." Lila's heart squeezed in her chest. It had been 36 hours since they'd pulled Ethan out of the cabin and arrested Rebecca Mitchell. 36 hours since his world flipped upside down. Since the only parents he'd ever known were dragged away in handcuffs, screaming. And since he met a dog who knew his name before anyone told him. Back at the motel, Hunter lay curled at the foot of Lila's bed, eyes closed, but not asleep. He hadn't been fully relaxed since they started the case. Now that Ethan was safe, Lila hoped he might finally rest. But the boy was still fragile, caught in the in-between. They couldn't just tell him who he was and expect it to stick. Trauma didn't work like that. And memory, especially memory in young children, was tricky. Still, something had sparked in him when he saw Hunter. Lila saw it. So did the therapist. It wasn't just curiosity or wonder. It was something deeper. A pull. Like Ethan knew that dog, somewhere in his bones, even if he couldn't name it yet. And now that tether, that thread of recognition, might be their only way in. The next morning, Lila stood outside the family visitation room as Ethan was led in by Claire, the social worker. The boy held his drawing tightly in his hands, a stick figure, a tall woman, a dog, and a little boy with the name Ethan written above him. He hadn't called himself that yet, but he had written it. That was something. Inside, Lila waited with Hunter on a mat in the corner. No uniform, no badge, just jeans and a hoodie. She didn't want to intimidate him. She wanted him to feel normal. Whatever that meant now. Ethan paused at the threshold, unsure. Claire gave him a soft push forward. You remember Officer Lila, right? The boy nodded. And Hunter? Hunter stood slowly, then sat, tail brushing the floor once, twice. Ethan's lip trembled, but he crossed the room. He remembers me, the boy said, kneeling. Layla smiled gently. I think maybe you remember him too. Ethan scratched behind Hunter's ears. I dreamt about a dog like this once, he said. When I was smaller, before. The word hung in the air like a suspended breath. Lila leaned forward. Do you want to know the dog's name back then? He nodded. Hunter. His name is Hunter. And when you were really little, you used to play with him. In a backyard. With a woman who loved you very, very much. Ethan didn't look up. They told me I didn't have a mom. That she died in a car accident. Before I was born. Lila felt something in her break. I know, she said softly. But that wasn't true. Your mom's name was Sarah. She was smart, brave. She hiked in the mountains and taught you to say bubble water when you saw the hot springs. You called her Mama. You held her hand and fed Hunter snacks when you thought no one was looking. Ethan stared at the floor, then whispered, She had brown hair, right? Lila blinked back tears. Yes. And she smelled like lemons. Lila nodded. I remember. After the session, Ethan didn't say much, but he asked if he could see Hunter again later. Maybe draw him. It wasn't a breakthrough, but it was a beginning. That afternoon, Detective Chen met Lila outside the sheriff's department. She handed her a tablet. What's this? Lila asked. Said, security footage. From the ranger station. You're going to want to see this. The video played grainy but clear. It showed Mitchell unlocking an employee locker. The date stamp read, August 2021, 2 years after Sarah's disappearance. He reached inside, pulled out a plastic bag, unzipped it. Jewelry, a compass necklace, a wedding ring, and something else, a child's sock. He examined them like they were precious. Then resealed the bag and placed it in a secondary box behind a false panel. He kept them all these years, Lila murmured. Chen folded her arms. Trophies. Or guilt, Lila said. Maybe both. They're going to press for the death penalty. Lila exhaled slowly. What about Ethan? Chen glanced at the building. Child Services will keep him in protected care for now. They're working on reunification protocols with his biological father. Lila nodded. Mark Brennan. Yeah? He's flying in tomorrow. That night, Lila sat outside the visitation room again. Hunter lay beside her, tail flicking, as Ethan drew another picture. This one was different. It showed a cabin, a dark one, with 2 stick figures inside, one large, one small, and a third figure outside. A dog, barking. In crayon, Ethan had written, Hunter saved me. He held it up. Can I give this to him? Lila smiled. You just did. The next day, Lila stood by the airport terminal, watching as a tall man with tired eyes stepped through the glass doors. His backpack was slung over one shoulder. His expression was blank, like someone bracing for a hurricane. Mr. Brennan? She asked. He looked at her. You're Lila? She nodded. And this is Hunter. Mark knelt immediately. Hey, buddy, he whispered, reaching out. Hunter leaned in, tail wagging. You remember me? Mark asked. Hunter licked his hand. Lila felt tears sting her eyes. Your son's inside, she said. He doesn't remember everything yet. But he's safe. He's strong. And he's ready to meet you. Mark swallowed. Does he know I'm coming? Lila nodded. He asked for you this morning. He said he wanted to meet the man who gave Hunter his name. Mark covered his mouth with a shaking hand. Then he whispered, Okay, I'm ready. Inside, Ethan sat in a chair, feet swinging. Claire placed a hand on his shoulder. Sweetie, someone very special is here to see you. Ethan looked up. Hunter trotted in first. And behind him, a man with eyes just like his. They stared at each other for a long time. Then Ethan said, Do you know the story about the bubble water? Mark choked out a laugh. Yeah, buddy, I do. I think I think I remember you. Mark dropped to his knees. I never forgot you. Hunter stepped between them, tail wagging like mad. The family, though battered and broken, was whole again, and it had taken a dog to bring them back together. It was raining when Ethan Brennan stepped into the front yard of his father's house for the first time in 6 years. Not pouring, just a light summer drizzle that made the trees shimmer and the world smell like wet earth and grass. His little backpack bounced on his shoulder, and he clutched a drawing in one hand. A stick figure holding the leash of a big German shepherd, both standing in front of a small house. The house looked a lot like the one they now stood in front of. "Ready, buddy?" Mark Brennan asked, crouching beside him. Ethan nodded, unsure. Hunter trotted up the steps ahead of them, tail wagging, as if he'd always lived there. Mark opened the front door, and they walked into a space that once echoed with silence, but now hummed with hope. There were no balloons, no fanfare, just warm lights, a framed photo of Sarah on the mantel, and a dog bed already waiting in the corner. Hunter picked it out, Mark said softly. Ethan cracked a small smile. He has good taste. The adjustment wasn't seamless. Ethan still sometimes called Mark Sir instead of Dad. He still had nightmares, flashes of cabins, deep woods, strange sounds in the dark. He missed things he didn't want to admit. Saturday pancakes with the Mitchells, bedtime stories that were lies but felt real. And sometimes he got mad, really mad, about everything. But Mark was patient. He never pushed, never punished, and never stopped telling his son he loved him. Hunter helped more than any counselor could have predicted. He never left Ethan's side, slept outside his bedroom door, waited by the bathroom when he showered, even followed him to the mailbox. He's like my shadow, Ethan said one day, brushing Hunter's fur. Mark knelt beside him. He was yours from the beginning, Ethan. He's just doing what he was born to do. One afternoon in late August, Ethan came home from his new school quieter than usual. Mark gave him space, letting the silence fill the kitchen while he stirred spaghetti on the stove. It wasn't until dinner that Ethan finally spoke. Today, someone asked me what my real name was, he said. Mark looked up from his plate. What did you say? I said Ethan. And then they said, oh, you mean the kid who got kidnapped? Mark set his fork down slowly. What did you say back? I said, yeah, that was me. But I'm not just that. Mark nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. Good, he said. That night, Ethan brought out a box from the closet. Inside were the few things he'd chosen to keep from the Mitchells. Books, a stuffed dinosaur, a flashlight. He placed them on the floor, one by one. Then he looked at Mark. Can I ask you something? Anything. If they hadn't taken me, do you think things would have been different? Like, would I still be the same person? Mark didn't answer right away. He sat beside his son, looking at the items. I think we're all shaped by the things that happen to us, he said. But I also think the core of who you are, the part that loves animals and hikes too fast uphill and laughs at dumb jokes, that part's always been you. Ethan leaned into him. I like that answer. Hunter padded over and rested his head on Ethan's knee. Me too, Ethan whispered into his fur. Weeks turned into months. Ethan started calling Mark Dad without thinking about it. He learned to ride a bike again, joined the soccer team, built a fort in the backyard where he kept drawings, snack wrappers, and a photo of Sarah and Hunter taken years before. But the biggest change came in October, when he stood in front of his 5th grade class and gave a presentation titled, My Hero Has 4 Legs. He told the story, gently, carefully, about how a dog found him in the woods, how that dog remembered him when he didn't remember himself, and how sometimes heroes don't wear capes or badges. Sometimes they wear collars and just bark at the right moment. His teacher cried, so did half the class, and Ethan, for the first time, stood a little taller. On Thanksgiving morning, The front porch was covered in orange and yellow leaves. Ethan sat beside Hunter, wrapped in a blanket, a steaming mug of cocoa in his hands. Mark joined him with a cup of coffee. "I want to go back someday," Ethan said. "Back where?" "To the trail, to the shelter, to where she was." Mark looked at him gently. "Are you sure?" Ethan nodded. "I want to say thank you for keeping me safe, and I want to say goodbye to her." Mark didn't speak. He just put an arm around his son and pulled him close. They returned to Avalanche Creek Shelter in December. Just Mark, Ethan, Lila Monroe, and Hunter. Snow dusted the trees. The trail was quiet. Still, Ethan walked ahead, confident now, stopping at the place where the necklace had been buried. He knelt, pulled out a small bundle from his jacket, a drawing and a letter. He placed it inside a sealed plastic pouch and tucked it under a rock. Then he stood and looked at Hunter. "Let's go home, buddy." Months later, the story made national news. It aired on a Sunday night under the headline, "The Dog Who Never Forgot." Interviews with Lila, Chen, Mark, even Ethan, seated between them, holding Hunter's collar in his lap. Viewers across the country watched in awe as a tale of grief, endurance, and instinct unfolded like something out of a movie. But it was all real. The final image showed Hunter lying beside Ethan on the porch, both staring out at the forest as the sun dipped low. The narrator's voice said, "Sometimes, when all seems lost, it's a loyal heart and a sharp nose that leads us back home." And now, if you've been with us this far, thank you. Thank you for following the remarkable journey of canine hunter Ethan and a family shattered by tragedy, but rebuilt through love and loyalty. If you found this story as powerful as we did, don't forget to subscribe to Heroes for Animals for more stories that honor the incredible bond between animals and humans. What would you do if a dog remembered something the world forgot? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.